So to start us off, Liam, why don't you talk about how we are making sure that we're using qualified inbounds and only bringing in the highest intent inbounds?
Yeah, so I'd say that bringing in the inbounds that you bring in and making sure that those are qualified and have a high amount of intent to purchase your product is one of the quickest ways that you can optimize your funnel and guarantee that conversion rates throughout the funnel will remain high and better. One of the things we did was to begin with is we split the funnel. So we split out the types of leads that were coming into the funnel first. So that means looking at our high intent direct demo requests, the high intent paid demo requests. So that's ones that we maybe are meeting and capturing in paid channels like in Google, where people will also be searching maybe and looking at competitors at the same time. So that's why that differs from the high intent organic. And then looking at low intent leads, such as webinar registrations and content downloads. And what we found was actually that those low intent leads that we were then passing on to SDRs for them to follow up were converting from lead to close one at 0.2%, whilst the inbound direct demo requests were converting from lead to close one at 4%. And obviously that's a huge difference. So that you can see instantly how you can optimize your funnel just by focusing on those direct inbounds. You can also look at other ways of qualifying before the leads come through, and that might be by offering pricing on your website. For example, you're going to put a lot of people off at that same time, maybe who want to see the tool, but then can see your pricing and maybe realize they can't afford it. At the same time, you're going to get a lot better qualified traffic of those who know and they have the budget for it and they're ready to be able to purchase. You can also, the pricing doesn't have to be added onto the website. You could also maybe add that in the discovery call stage, where if you have more flexible pricing that would be better openly discussed on the website, that could be another point that you could do it at, rather than waiting for them to get all the way to the AE to speak to find out about pricing. And then finally, another way that you could qualify is by running a product-led growth model and having a freemium layer. In that you actually allow people to sort of qualify themselves out through use of the product themselves and work through different layers in the product to actually then move through to become a better lead for sales to begin with by getting used to the product, finding out whether it's something for them and moving through different barriers to actually know whether they want to use the have greater product usage and use it further. So I think they would be my main ways of then before the leaders even come in, how you can actually optimize to bring in the best possible MQLs.
Yes, and I definitely think from an operational perspective as well, it reduces the amount of cases we need to think about once they come in, because we only have really a direct demo request, a pricing request, and maybe a direct freemium sign up that we have to account for then from an operational perspective of what happens after someone fills out a form. And then coming to the forms themselves, you do a lot of great job work bringing everything onto the website now. We want to convert them to the forms. What can we do at that point to really get the forms to a place where they're ideal from a customer's perspective, but also from a business perspective?
Yeah, I think there's form positioning obviously on each of the page. I think there's always people discuss about whether you could have you go super aggressive and you have your form above the fold and straight in front of people's direct eye line, and that is the first thing they see, or whether you maybe have you could have it it's sort of a pop-up or further down the page and be less aggressive. And I think that really depends on the page and what you're trying to achieve. There are some times where if getting that sort of sign up is a secondary objective, then you don't want it always to be so aggressive. But I think for your best conversion rates, for your high intent pages, your demo page, then you want that form to be above the fold, straight at an immediate view with a direct sort of action about what you wanted to take. And then I also think there's the obviously all of the side messaging. I think quite often you can see the forms are just sort of placed there, but people don't actually know what the benefit is for filling out that form. So I think on that, if you're doing it, like if you've got a pricing page or you've got a demo request page, then you need to have next to your form, like simplified in the best possible way, those key benefits, what they're going to get from seeing that demo, like exactly what they'd get from having that call to further discuss pricing. And have that easily mapped out so that they know exactly what they're going to get by completing that form. And I think that's key before you even then start looking at the number of fields that you might have on the form as well. And I personally think that part is like a balance really between creating good customer experience versus the actual needs that you have for the business. I think from our perspective, we would love to just have only first name and email address, but then we can't actually get in contact with those people as easily, and that would affect other conversion rates in the funnel, like being able to get our meeting booked rate, and whether and the speed to lead and the time that it takes us to get to them. And not only that, we would struggle to route and move people through on the other side and actually get people to speak to the right people, and in the right time zone, the right language, in the right way. So I know from like an operations perspective, that's like how you would take it into account as well, and like trying to basically have the least possible fields possible, but the maximum business outcome as well and customer outcome.
Yeah, definitely something I always have in the back of my mind. How do we make sure we get the lead to the right person? And also I think stuff like, for example, the phone number can be very helpful to actually show a bit more intent as well. Because if someone's not willing to give you their phone number when they ask for a demo, you might ask yourself why that is. If they're just browsing or if they're actually interested in purchasing our solution.
Yes, I think that's a good point. I think some people think that obviously that if you have, for every form field you have on a form, you lose your conversion rate drops slightly, but you've got to also put into question, like, if I really want something, I'll fill out every form for it. So it is also a measure of intent. And if you obviously have like reduced form fields, you're like reduced number of fields, and you're going to have like people who fill it out with like less consideration, which actually can affect your conversion rate further down the funnel anyway.
Then talking about that next step, we fill out the form. We want people to get to a meeting, want to speak to them. One of the solutions we've implemented is having a direct meeting booking solution. So can you talk us through a bit about maybe why we did that and what the idea was behind it?
Yeah, I think the direct, being able to book directly and not sort of fill out a form and wait for someone to contact you is really at the core of it, although it has immense benefits for us as a business, it is really at the core of it about customer experience. I think the worst thing is when you fill out a form, you go to a thank you page and you have no idea really when they're next going to contact you. And it might not come at a time that's appropriate to you. You might miss it, and then that causes delay and you get your meeting in, when really you're normally ready to speak to someone either at the point that you're completing that form, or you want to at least have an expectation of when you're going to be able to speak to someone. So if the company can't offer to speak to you directly at that point to speak that form, and maybe sometimes you're not as well. Maybe sometimes I will complete a form and as I'm going into a meeting or something, so I don't want to be called straight away because I wouldn't be able to answer it anyway. So I think the main benefit is it's about setting expectations, and when you have an expectation that I've filled out this form, I booked a meeting for Thursday at 2 this week, I know when that's going to happen, then actually the speed to lead element of like getting to someone immediately matters less, because they're actually just happy with the expectation they have. They know when they're going to have their conversation, they know when they can move through. Obviously, you still want to be able to offer as many available slots early as possible for those who do want to speak to you quickly, but I think expectation setting then has a downward impact on actually all of the next metrics of business work. So we know that then when people are able to book the meeting, the time for their desire, they're more likely, one, they book the meeting there and then, it's instant. Two, they're more likely then to turn up to that meeting, it's time chosen by them. And then that offsets everything, like a better sales process throughout, which then increases conversion rates then throughout the funnel. So yeah, I know that after implementing like a meeting booking system, I think we've doubled
Yeah.
like MQL to operate. Is that right?
Yeah, so we doubled our MQL to operate, so and also MQL to meeting attended rate, and with meeting attended we mean a demo. Actually, because before there is sometimes steps like the MDR does a step, the MDR does a discovery call, not a demo call, and we have meeting bookings where you book a discovery call, and that's like clearly told as well, like you're just booking a discovery call. Right now we don't have enough information about you, but that still, it speeds up the time, and then those people who book the discovery or demo call are much more likely to convert down the funnel. As we said, like double is what we're seeing right now, which again, part of it is because I think people who book a meeting already show more intent. There's like, I think a bit of that in there, but like we saw in general uplift in our overall conversion rate as well. So I think it's definitely showing great success.
So another part that's really important is obviously being able to, and I sort of touched on this, I suppose, when I was talking about the reducing the number of form fills and making sure I'm having accurate information there, is on the different types of enrichment that you can do to maybe like do those things. So could you talk us through maybe those three different types of enrichment, being form enrichment, instant enrichment within the CRM, and scheduled enrichment?
Yes, of course. So let's say the holy grail almost, I think from a marketing operations perspective, is a form enrichment. So the enrichment happens while someone fills out a form. What that means is down the line, you can start to actually reduce fields because maybe the enrichment already knows the data that you need. So you don't need to ask for it. So that's really like almost the ideal state. It's like really great from a data perspective. And then also if you have something like a meeting booking solution, you can use those additional data points to route to the right calendar. And the problem you often have with like enrichment happens later is that when someone wants to book a meeting, most meeting booking solutions take the data that has been filled out in the form. And if you only ask for, let's say, first name, email, phone number, you have very little to go off to decide who should the meeting go to. You can really only have some kind of inbound team that works across all segments or regions, but that obviously leads to issues. So having an on-form enrichment really helps you make sure you send the right person in the right region with the right language, things like that. Obviously, this is something that is technically relatively tricky. So then the next solution would be to let's enrich just after the form fill happened. That means like on the meeting booking, you might have to do some, clever routing and think about, okay, who should follow this up first. But it also means when someone doesn't book a meeting, for example, like for us, it's like around 30% of people we want to book a meeting that don't select the time. We then can get that additional information on them and really make sure those people who might be harder to reach because they don't have a time in their calendar, they get followed up by the perfect person to follow up with them that is in the right time zone, that has the right language capabilities, that is also from the sales process the person who is best. So thinking about inbounds, and some inbounds are obviously more likely to convert down the funnel than others, and we know that that's why we have ideal customer personas and all those kind of things. And if we say to those people like you actually are a perfect prospect, so what we're going to do is we send you straight to an AE. We step a couple of discovery steps maybe because we know most likely you already kind of pre-qualify from a marketing and sales perspective. And then the last layer is a scheduled enrichment, and that for me is all about keeping your data clean. It's like a constant update of your data, and that then can help you down when you do especially analysis on your funnel. If you look at the whole big picture and what came in, you can really segment and say, okay, now I have a fuller data picture. I've also updated data, maybe that was out of date, or where someone might have put in something slightly different in a form. Sometimes people misspell their company name and then everything goes slightly off. And if you then enrich all of these data points, when you do your final analysis, you really see, okay, where do our high intent inbounds come from? What is the key path to success for us? And then drill down on those things.
And would you have all the different types of enrichment running at once, or?
So I think you want to ideally, yes. Yeah. So we have all three types of enrichment running, and really, every additional layer of enrichment gives us an additional layer of information in the end. Also, there's maybe things, because if you think about like an on-form enrichment, you don't want to enrich everything because it takes time. and the fewer data points you enrich, the better and the more streamlined. So you want to really focus on what do I need at this step. And then on the instant enrichment, you say, okay, what additional information do I need now? And then the schedule is like, okay, if I want to do big picture, what other stuff, which isn't time critical, I can also enrich. And then talking about all these enrichments and talking about how we analyze the fund as well. I know you and I and a lot of other people in the team, we talk very regularly. We have a feedback loop in place to make sure we catch up. And I look at data a lot. You look to have more quantitative sometimes and qualitative feedback as well. So can you talk us about it, like how we do our feedback loops over here?
Yeah, I think we've got all of we can look at all of the data, but I think having that communication between really the go-to-market team and marketing, sales, and operations is like essential. So we have our bi-weekly, which I think is really more to sort of keep to beat with any sort of things that are changing quickly that you wouldn't be able to see in larger data trends over time. So it might simply be inbound reps letting us know about quality, AEs letting us know about meeting volume in the last couple of weeks, or consistent things that they, again, quality or things that they see come up. It gives that sort of time as well for their inbound reps and AEs maybe to discuss as well, like some of that handoff process, and any of the qualification done at the early stages, whether that's benefiting them. It enables us to talk about what we're trying to do and some of those, I think, ways that we're trying to bring in more qualified traffic in the first place, and then getting feedback to see if that's actually working. And I think it gives operations all the time to as well to figure out maybe what is the next thing that we actually need to enrich, maybe what it is, what data we are missing, whether any of the flows into both inbound reps and AEs are off, and also then aligning as well potentially the way they're incentivized as well to what we're trying to do to get them in. And I think that's the best way to get sort of that quick quantitative feedback, which I think is really important and is just as important as looking at what the data's saying is what the sales team is saying specifically, and obviously the marketing and operations team and what we're trying to do to feed into them. And then I think we got that monthly meeting, which is way more of looking at the overall data and trend for that month, and then we do that obviously on the quarter. And I think that's really good at looking at where we are against targets that we set throughout the funnel. So all the different conversion rates that we're trying to achieve. And I think and also then talking those through between the departments. And I think that meeting is also really important in terms of being able to then figure out maybe, we've changed something that means that our, MQL to meeting booked rate is dropped, but our meeting attended to SQO rate has increased, and therefore we actually need to change our assumptions, or we can, forgive that that's a missed target because we know that something's exceeded further down. So I think that is a perfect forum to be able to discuss those things and discuss maybe what we want to change and what levers we want to pull to switch up any of those conversion rates to achieve what we want to achieve. So yeah, I think those meetings for us are fundamental to just keep all of the departments talking and to enable us to actually make decisions together collectively based on data and experience.
And I think for me as well, there's a loop between those meetings. So for me, often the bi-weekly meetings, you get a lot of qualitative feedback that then I take back and say, okay, let's look at the data. Mm-hmm. And then for the next monthly meeting, usually, which is more by an operational data focus, I then bring back that data. It's we discussed, you saw this issue. Right now in the data, we're not seeing it. It's not dismissing it necessarily, or we are seeing it. But it's the kind of the awareness that, okay, we are looking at this, we're working together. Mm-hmm. We take also the sales and marketing feedback serious. I think that's very important when you look at data, because you get really easy into a loop where the operations side is just oh yeah, this is the numbers, there's no problem, or there is a problem. Whereas, the reality is we all know not everything can be shown in the numbers. So I think those two meetings for me at least give me a good way of okay, I take something that I can then put into numbers, and I give something that then people can give me qualitative feedback on.
Yeah, data tells one side of the story, but you also can't just respond to anecdotes because they only tell one story, literally.
Yeah.